the internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVMTV.
So much more than entertainment.
Need to estimate your duty? Perform a track and trace? Search for a declaration?
Then download the Jamaica Customs mobile app today. The time by the Jamaica Customs Agency is
12 p.m.
Thanks for joining us for CVM News at Noon. It's Thursday, January 22, 2026. I'm Amoy Harriet. Jurors are now deliberating whether to return a guilty or not guilty verdict in the Noel Maitland murder case. During his summation Thursday morning, Justice Leighton Pusey reminded the 7 jurors that no one can remember everything perfectly. Maitland is on trial for murder and preventing the lawful burial of a corpse. Justice Pusey told jurors that if the evidence satisfied them beyond a reasonable doubt, they must find the accused guilty. If there is doubt, then he must be acquitted. Summarizing the Crown's case, the judge reminded jurors that they are the judges of the fact. The prosecution began with evidence from the mother of Donnelly Donaldson, who testified that she shared a close relationship with her daughter and that her disappearance was unusual. According to the evidence, Donnelly was at home when she received a call from Maitland. He later picked her up and they went away together. On July 13, Maitland allegedly called Donnelly's mother asking for her. The Crown also relied on testimony from a witness who said Maitland asked him to review security camera footage after reporting his girlfriend missing. The witness claimed Maitland later instructed him to delete the footage, saying he was up for promotion and didn't want anything embarrassing revealed. The prosecution argued that Donnelly was last seen at Maitland's home and was never seen again, pointing to his actions including washing the couch and reviewing camera footage as evidence from which the juror could infer that something happened. The defense, however, countered that the prosecution failed to prove that Maitland killed Donnelly. They highlighted his good character, noting that during their 3-year relationship and despite him having a child with another woman, there was no evidence of prior violence or altercations. The defense also questioned the reliability of evidence regarding blood found on the couch and that the witness's testimony became uncertain under cross-examination. Justice Pusey is urging jurors to consider these questions. 1. Based on evidence, are they sure beyond a reasonable doubt that Donnelly is dead? 2. Are they sure beyond a reasonable doubt Maitland killed Donnelly or participated in the killing? And 3. Do you believe she's dead and there's a corpse? 4. Do you believe he has knowledge of the corpse and has prevented the lawful burial? Our reporter Akeem Oret is in court and we'll have more on the Noel Maitland trial in CVM News at 7. There's a renewed call this afternoon for the government to expand and strengthen the network of shelters for victims of domestic violence. The call comes following a reported murder-suicide involving a wife and husband in Harborview, St. Andrew on Tuesday. Executive Director of E4Life, Joy Crawford, says while some safe houses already exist, too many victims feel they have nowhere to turn, even while navigating the court process against their alleged abusers. Speaking on CVM's lead story on Wednesday, she warned that the lack of refuge is forcing many victims back into the hands of the very people hurting them.
You can't force someone to leave their home or leave a situation. But most people will leave or if they feel like they have an alternative for safety and protection. In other words, if I go somewhere, he won't follow me and he won't get to me. I'm providing those somewhere. At a government level, at a family level, at a church level, where in our society do victims and women who have been abused go for safety and security? That is the biggest need.
Meanwhile, senior communication strategist in the JCF, Senior Superintendent Dennis Brooks, says within the last few years, the number of reports have been declining, but more men have been coming forward to report domestic violence since last year. SSP Brooks notes that the force is expanding its domestic violence units across the island to strengthen intervention efforts. He adds that officers are being specially trained to respond more effectively to victims.
One will always say you could do more. Absolutely. This year we're going to have one in Manchester on the 14th of February. We're going to have one in St. Elizabeth on the 21st.
These are these pop-ups that you're speaking of?
Yes, these pop-ups. We're going to have one in Westmoreland on the 28th, one in Hanover on the 7th of March, and one in St. James on the 14th of March. And so these are where we bring a large contingent of specialists into the space, and we do a lot of public education where it's concerned. We do a lot of engagement.
Drug prevention programs need to begin as early as possible. That appeal from medical experts this afternoon following a warning from the Firearms and Narcotics Investigation Division, FNID, that more Jamaicans are being drawn into drug trafficking. FNID also revealed that more people are ingesting the drugs they're smuggling. Experts say young people are the most vulnerable and are increasingly falling victims to the trade.
We have to look at the multifaceted approach, the legislative side of things. From a public health perspective, we really want to look at evidence-based drug programs because the people who are most affected, as you would have said, are vulnerable people. So we're talking about young people who are recruited into this. And so we need to be able to start drug prevention programs as early as possible so that we know the dangers of these things, programs like this to educate persons. And we also want to look at other areas in terms of the supply and demand areas, in terms of providing alternatives for people who are within this trade.
If I ingest the substance and what the people who have given it to me to ingest have not done it properly, then I will suffer the consequences of leakage, which will affect my health permanently in the long term, because I will now have changes in my neurovascular system, in my digestive system, and I can also die. So you have to work out the cost benefit of what you're doing. And when you look at the cost of detection and the cost of rupture or leakage of the substance that you have ingested, I think the end result with what you say, it is just not worth it. And I think that is what we need to do on a national scale, to let people look at the cost benefit of their actions.
The Negril police in Westmoreland have confirmed that criminal charges will be laid against the boat captain of the vessel which overturned off the shores of Negril Tuesday, claiming the life of a Canadian tourist. Dead is 68-year-old Jean Damour of Ontario. It's reported that about 1:30 p.m., Damour, who was a guest at the Rio Hotel in Negril and a companion of his, chartered the boat captain to take them sightseeing. It's further reported that based on the rough sea conditions, the boat captain should not have ventured out to sea, but he agreed to do the tour. While at sea, the boat met rough waters and capsized. A rescue team managed to rescue Damour's companion, but Damour drowned. His body was later recovered. Police say the boat captain was operating illegally and against all the policies that governs tourists' boat rides. One investigator told CVM News that the sightseeing vessels are required to have a lifeguard on board, and visitors must be equipped with life jackets. It's time now for a break, but stay with us. Our live interview comes up next.
Hi, I'm Landy. Welcome to NLA Connect, the National Land Agency's customer engagement platform. NLA Connect is a simple, user-friendly platform designed to help you share your feedback, get support, and updates about land-related matters. Available 24/7, NLA Connect allows you to share suggestions, comments, and commendations, submit queries and report issues, attach files with your requests, track requests and get real-time status updates, connect with NLA client engagement officers, and provide feedback on the service received by the platform. We're making it easier for you to connect with us. You can access NLA Connect via our website, using the kiosk at any of our offices or scanning the QR code displayed at our locations. Need any help along the way? Check out our FAQs section. It has all the answers you need in one location. NLA Connect, your voice, our priority.
Get tiles and get creative with your floors, walls, and all the spaces in between. Our knowledgeable sales consultants are happy to help create your beautiful finish with the latest designs in first quality porcelain, wood look, vinyl, mosaics, natural stones, and countertops. At Creative, you will get every tile you need for your residential or commercial projects. Creative Building Finishes, your one-stop shop for everything tiles. Visit our showroom at 5 Red Hills Road or call 876-929-5553. Get tiles, get creative.
Welcome back to CVM News at noon. On Wednesday, human rights group Jamaicans for Justice launched a report looking at the Access to Information Act. That's the law that gives the public a legal right to access documents held by government entities. JFJ Executive Director Michael Jackson now joins us to talk more about this. Ms. Jackson, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
Before we talk about the findings in the report, can you explain for our viewers, using a specific relatable example, why this should matter to the average Jamaican?
Well, every Jamaican citizen, we have a constitutional right to seek, receive, and disseminate information. We also have a constitutional right of freedom of expression. So, for example, when we want to hold the government accountable, when we want to be assured that our money, our tax money is being spent in the way that is accountable, then you can ask a state agency any question as long as it's not breaching people's confidential information. So you can't ask for Michael Jackson's personal information, but what you can do, for example, is to ask the Ministry of Health what decision was taken, how a particular decision was taken, for example, on procurement processes relating to how your money was spent at a public health facility.
So over a period of 8 months, JFJ made over 100 ATI requests to 101 public bodies. Briefly, what did you find?
Well, the law says, firstly, that our requests, when you make them, should be acknowledged. The law also says that your request should be fulfilled within 30 days. If that state body is unable to give you the information within 30 days, then the law says they must ask for an extension for a period not exceeding a further 30 days. So what we found is that only 69 of 111 requests were fulfilled at all, and only 30% were fulfilled within the stipulated 30-day period. Then another 30% were not fulfilled at all. So in other words, nobody acknowledged the request, nobody gave us the data.
What does that say to you?
That the law is not being adhered to. But we have to ask the question, why? Is it a case where the access to information officers, they're overburdened with requests coming in? Is it a case where we need to digitize the records? So for example, we ask an ATI officer for information, and they say they have to get information from another agency, and then the information is some hard copy that they have to go through and analyze whatever information you had to ask for, rather than in an age of technology, you go on a computer system, you pull down the data.
So for context, for our viewers, what kind of documents were you asking for?
It was several. It depends on the agency.
Okay.
So for example, let me use the Ministry of National Security because it's JFTA you're talking to now. We may ask how many body cameras were deployed to a particular division. How many body cameras do you have? And if we say that the state of public emergency, this is a past request, no, not in this report, but if we say that the state of public emergency, it was working, how many people were detained, for what period they were detained, how many of them were charged after. That is the kind of information that we were asking. Other colleagues have asked for budgets. Other colleagues have asked for minutes in a meeting and so on. So it depends on the agency and what information you perhaps would need.
So is it safe to say then that the law perhaps isn't working?
Let me start by saying that Jamaica, we have a framework and we must acknowledge that, because some other Caribbean countries, they do not have an Access to Information Act. But there are still areas for improvement, which is why, for example, and some of the improvement, by the way, just to be clear, isn't necessarily by legislation. Some improvement is training the ATI officers, ensuring that they have the tools to do their work, ensuring, for example, that we have a platform that us as citizens, media practitioners like yourself, can go on this portal and say, let me submit a request to do investigative journalism. And I use the example of the Uber taxi. You have the Uber platform now, you call the taxi, you say when the taxi answer you say how long the taxi is going to take. If the taxi buck up on traffic, you see that they're going to be delayed, and they let you know and you can make further inquiries. It's that type of web portal that we all need to track our ATI requests. And I just want to urge citizens, it's not just a tool for journalists and civil society to do our work. It's a tool that we can all use as citizens to hold the government to account.
So JFJ is also making some recommendations for reform. What are a couple of the most important ones, you'd say?
Well, the first and foremost important one is for us to get moving with establishing a joint select committee. There seems to be some uncertainty from the government in terms of whether that is the route that they want to take with having a reform done. And I hasten to add that when this act was passed in 2002, it was only reviewed once. And there is a 2011 report, but it was never acted upon. So let's imagine it's now 2026. You have a law from 2002. Since then, you have technology, TikTok, social media. You have a Data Protection Act dealing with privacy. So in our humble opinion here at JFJ, we believe that the government should establish a joint select committee where journalists like yourselves, the Press Association, civil society and citizens can make their recommendation. That is our foremost call. The second important recommendation I want to put on the table, we have an Access to Information unit, but they have more administrative powers. You have an ATI tribunal for appeal, but they don't have certain binding decision powers. So what JJ is saying, let us have a body that is independent. It's like when you reach 18 years old, viewers, and you live in your parents' house, and they say, listen, even though you're 18, you must follow our rule. Because currently the system is such that the ATI unit falls within the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information. JFJ is saying perhaps this body ought to be within the structure of the Office of the Information Commissioner that is empowered in law to be independent and reports directly to Parliament. So you have that autonomy, the big people approach. You can make your decisions and you can say to the public, these are my concerns, rather than a unit that sometimes may not be as empowered to speak on the issues and get the needle moving in ensuring that your right to know, my right to know is being respected.
So we saw where Parliamentary Secretary in the Information Ministry, that Senator Marlon Morgan, he spoke at you guys' launch yesterday and pretty much made some commitments for reforming the ATI Act. Did any of his announcements impress you?
Absolutely. It was a beautiful presentation. We were happy to have the senator, and some of them, they're quite aligned with our recommendation. For example, the web portal that I mentioned, the training of the ATI officers. But the proof will come when it actually gets done. Because while we appreciate some of these commitments, they have been made before. So we just have to hold the government to account and trust the good senator to his words that these will be done. Because the only disagreement for the most part that there may be having some divergent views is the establishment of the Joint Select Committee. And that's the one that JFJ Civil Society will be pressing to get done.
Was there anything he didn't say that you were hoping you'd hear?
No, because let me say, the senator was quite receptive to the recommendations. So it's just the movement on the reform that we believe we want a better and firmer commitment from the ministry.
All right. Thank you so much, Ms. Jackson. That was Executive Director of JFJ, Mikkel Jackson. Thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
To news now overseas, the U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization officially takes effect on January 22nd, which is today, 1 year after President Donald Trump first announced the decision. Trump cited funding disparities and alleged Chinese influence over the WHO's handling of COVID-19.